Hello, welcome. This is Abyss Whispers. Today I want to talk about a very important item in Elden Ring. This single item will solidify Elden Ring's position as Game of the Year, perhaps even Game of the Century. And no, I'm not talking about a certain banned undergarment. I'm talking about the Mimic Veil. Not only does it help regular, everyday mimics dress up and feel extra fancy, but it's also a very useful disguise, helping you blend into your surroundings and accomplish daring sneak attacks. However, not all disguises are created equally, so I thought, why not take a look at all the Mimic Veil transformations and rank them based on two factors. First, their effectiveness as a disguise. This factor will consider the texture of the object, whether or not it looks similar to the real object that it's meant to mimic, and how well it can be used in the area that you actually can transform into it as a effective disguise. The second and arguably more important factor is how cool the object is. I'm going to call this factor style. Based on the combined disguise and style scores, each object is given a total score which corresponds to the tier that they're in. So, starting out with the absolute worst transformations, this is the F tier objects, and all of these only scored 3 points total between style and disguise. We're starting off this list with what I'm going to call the bent gate, or the broken gate. It's not the most boring object on this list, but it's really not that interesting. As a disguise, it's not that great either. It seems pretty hard to position it in a believable way. The frozen stick, or the frozen branch, whatever you want to call it, it is not very interesting. It seems a little difficult to find a good place where this huge stick will actually blend into the surroundings. The crate. This is probably the worst looking object, not just because it's pretty boring, but also because the texture of it is terrible. It looks almost like PS3 graphics. I don't know what's up with the crate. As a disguise, since it's small, you can still use it, shove it in a corner, and a lot of people will probably run right past it. But if someone stops to look, they're gonna notice that this crate seems a little off. These next transformations are E-tier objects, starting out with the dead lent squirt. It's pretty gross. It's not really enjoyable to look at. It's not that cool, but it's cooler than a crate. As a disguise, I think it's fairly believable. The texture is not perfect, not exactly like the original, but I think if you're lying down in a lake like Agio Lake or something, someone probably won't really notice that this isn't a real dead lent squirt. The pile of boxes. This is a very basic pile of boxes. It doesn't really have any style, any cool factor about it. I think it's a decent disguise, especially for how large an object it is. It really does blend into its surroundings well. The spirit deer. I wish that I could rank the spirit deer higher, because I think it is very cool. I love the spirit animals in general, and I'm really happy that we can transform into them using the mimic veil. But it is a terrible disguise. It doesn't move at all, so someone can very easily tell the difference between a real spirit deer and you who's just standing still like a cardboard cutout. Next we have the D tier transformations. This lantern post is undeniably boring. It's a very basic object. However, I think it's the perfect disguise. Not only does it look pretty much identical to the real thing, but it's super versatile. You can use this on any roadside in Limgrave and no one will know you're there. The flag doesn't have much style, but it is very believable. It looks like the real thing. It's not a perfect disguise, however, since these flags aren't really that common in Limgrave, but if you use them in the right location, I think it's a great disguise. This statue is the lowest ranked of all the statues you can transform into. It's nice, but not really that interesting, I guess. And as a disguise, it's not that great, considering that you transform into this in Liurnia of the Lakes. There's not very many areas where a statue like this would blend in. The green bush. It's as basic as they come, but it is one of the best disguises. Just like the lantern post, you see the green bush everywhere. The barrel, again, it has no style at all, but it's a perfect disguise. Stick it in any corner and no one will know you're there. The wheelbarrow, it's kind of an interesting object, and it has all sorts of tools in the back of it. As a disguise, it's kind of mediocre. The texture is a little off, and since it's such a big object, I think it could be noticeable if someone walks up to it and they think, hey, something looks weird about this wheelbarrow. And yeah, you might be found out. The wooden chair. Yes, it's basic, but I think it has a little bit of style because you can offer your friends a seat after defeating some catacomb bosses. You know, everyone needs a rest sometimes. The dead rat. I don't know why, but I kind of like this object. I can't explain it. I think it does have a bit of style though. As a disguise, it's not great. The real rats in Elden Ring have gray, fuzzy fur, and the rat that you transform into with the mimic veil has no texture to it, no gray fur. It looks very flat, and I think that's noticeable. Next up is the C tier transformations. This bush is a little more interesting than the green bush. It's a nice orange fall color, and as a disguise, it's perfect. The marionette soldier. I think it's pretty cool you can transform into one of these guys. I mean, they're such jerks that probably anyone who sees you sitting there isn't going to want to walk up to you just in case, you know, you're the real thing and you might get up and start flailing around like a crazy person. But it's not a brilliant disguise because I don't think there are that many areas where a marionette soldier would just be sitting on the ground like this. Maybe Albinork Village. I'm trying to think of somewhere else. I mean, inside Raya Lucaria itself, but you don't actually transform into this inside Raya Lucaria. So Yeah, it's not a great disguise. The barrel with a shovel. It's a bit more interesting than a plain barrel, but it's still a barrel. As a disguise, I think it's great. Just sit in any corner of a cave or tunnel and no one will know you're there. This one I'm going to call a tripod lantern. I don't know. It's kind of mediocre in terms of its looks, and as a disguise, it's fairly good. It looks real, but since it's pretty big, you might not find that many areas to use it in. Next up, we have this portrait of a sorcerer. I think it's kind of cool that you can transform into one of these portraits, and I like the look of it. But as a disguise, it's not that great. I mean, it does look real, but it's kind of hard to position. You have to make sure you're leaning perfectly against the wall, and since it kind of stands out, I don't think it's that great of a disguise. This flag is a little cooler than the other flag we saw. It has an Erd tree on it, and it's a nice golden color, so it's a little more stylish, I suppose. Again, it's a decent disguise. There's not that many areas where you could use it, but where you can, I think it's perfect. This spiky fence is kind of cool actually. It's got arrows sticking out of it, and I mean, who doesn't like a good spiky fence? It blends in really well with the surroundings, and if you set up next to a real spiky fence, no one will know you're there. The bird cage. It's a little plain, but it's not ugly. It's kind of nice looking, and I think it offers a decent disguise. You do see a lot of these bird cages throughout Raya Lucaria, so I think it keeps you pretty well hidden, and it looks real, so yeah, it's pretty good. These golden flowers are pretty nice looking. I like them. They're kind of mid-tier in terms of both how cool they are and how much they can keep you hidden. Depending on where you use them, it could be an effective disguise, but it could also really stand out because of the gold color. I think it draws the eye too much. This barricade type thing is kind of boring, not that cool, but I think it's a great disguise. In Stormvale, you see a lot of these, and I think you could use this transformation really effectively to hide amongst the other barricade type things. This pink fungus looking thing isn't the most interesting. We see this all over Caelid, but that's what makes this such a perfect disguise. It blends in perfectly with its surroundings, and you can pretty much use this anywhere in Caelid and no one will be the wiser. So, we are moving up in the world to the B tier transformations. First off, we have the imp statue. In general, I like the statues, but I don't really like the imps that much. I think it's a pretty good disguise though. If you position it correctly against a wall in the hallway of a catacombs, it really does blend in and could be used really effectively to surprise someone. This statue, on the other hand, I think is gorgeous. It's super cool. It looks like it's overgrown with ivy and it has little bits of gold on it. It's very nice. As a disguise, it's not so great. It does really stand out, and I'm not really sure where you could use it. Although it does look pretty believable compared to some of the other statues, the textures on this one are pretty good. This cage, It looks like something that Volcano Manor uses to capture and imprison Albinorics, which is kind of messed up, but also kind of cool, I guess. As for keeping you hidden, I think it would do a decent job. It blends in really well with all the other sort of cages and torture devices in Volcano Manor. Next we have this barrel, but it's a special barrel. It has swords in it. So I think that makes it a little cooler than the other barrels on this list. And again, it's a great disguise. All of the barrels really are perfect disguises. This potted tree is pretty nice looking. I like it. I like the greenery, and it's a good disguise too. It looks real, and I think there's a lot of places you could use this in Landell where no one would notice that it's not a real tree. This vase or urn, or maybe it's a chamber pot. Do you think this is a chamber pot for beastmen? Comment down below. Anyways, it's not that interesting, but it's not that boring either. I don't know. It's mediocre in the style department, but I think it's a great disguise. It's small, so you can fit it in any corner, in any nook or cranny. No one will see you. This fire in a cage thing, are these called braziers? I think these are called braziers, but I don't know if Divinity Original Sin 2 used accurate terminology or not for these kinds of things. Anyway, it's again kind of mediocre in the style department, but a perfect disguise, I think. I've actually used this one quite a few times in caves to surprise invaders, and it's pretty funny seeing their reaction. The astrolabe is something you see around Raya Lucaria a lot, so it's a very good disguise. And on top of that, it's kind of an interesting object. This armor set looks very realistic, and it's a pretty cool armor set. You see other armor like this in Stormvale Castle, so I think it's a good disguise. It'll keep you hidden, and you'll look cool doing it. This is like a clump of plants and weird funguses and a rib cage. It's kind of cool looking, I guess, but the biggest thing going for it is that it is an amazing disguise. You can use this anywhere in Caelid and you will completely disappear. Okay guys, we are finally at the A tier transformations. So these ones are almost the best, but not quite. First off, we have this fire cannon thing. It's pretty cool. I think it's got like a hawk's face, like a storm hawk, and it looks real, and there's quite a lot of these in Stormvale Castle. So I think it's a decent disguise. I mean, you can't use it anywhere, but in the area where it makes sense, I think it would be a great disguise. The clump of crystals, they're nice looking, they're pretty. I mean, the crystals in general, they're nice to look at, and they look super real. You can use this all over Liurnia of the Lakes. There's crystals everywhere. You will completely disappear, totally and utterly. This statue is interesting. It's a little creepy looking, but I like it. It's holding some kind of branch. And as far as statues go, I don't think it stands out too much, especially in Landell, where everything's basically made out of stone anyway. I think this statue will blend in to its surroundings fairly well. This might be just my own personal preference, but I think this candelabra is very nice. aesthetically speaking, and as a disguise, I think it does a fairly good job too. It looks like the real thing. It is a little bit on the large side. You might not be able to use it in that many spots, but yeah, it's a decent disguise. This statue, which is holding a candle, is gorgeous to look at. I love it. It's great. I mean, it gets top points for style. However, I think it does stand out a bit too much to be a good disguise. Since it looks believable, it has a good texture to it. You could still use it in some spots, but it's not perfect. This weird husk person is pretty cool. I like it a lot, actually. And I think it's a pretty good disguise too. Especially in areas where there are already husk-like things. You could just turn into this, sit in a corner, and you'll blend in pretty well. Here we have another brazier? I think that's what they're called. I really hope that's what they're called. This one is a little more interesting than the other one. It has what looks like a branding tool in it, so obviously this is used by Volcano Manor to torture Albinorix, which is horrible, but kind of cool. Yeah. The headless dragon statue. This is probably my favorite statue of all the statues you can transform into. I mean, I like dragons in general, but it's headless and legless too. For some reason, it just reminds me of the dragon butts from Lost Isle. As a disguise, it's a little mediocre. It's pretty big, so it does stand out. But I think since the area is made of stone mostly, it does blend in okay. And the Beastman statue is kind of in a similar situation where it looks really cool. It gets top points for style, but it is a little bit of a mediocre disguise. Okay, so we have finally reached the best of the best. These three transformations are the S tier objects, the best things that the Mimic Veil has to offer. First off, we have the torture chair. This is a chair covered in spikes with restraints. Again, it seems like something that Volcano Manor uses to torture the Albinorix or Albinorix. The second S tier transformation are these gravestones. I like gravestones, they look cool. What can I say? As a disguise, they're also pretty good. They look really real. You could just go sit in the graveyard and be totally hidden. And finally, my personal choice for the absolute best Mimic Veil transformation. It might surprise you because it does seem like it's a little on the simple side, but it is this candle. Of course, it's not the coolest item on this list, but personally, I really like the way it looks. It gives a really nice ambiance, it lights up dark areas, and what's cool is it kind of has more of a bluer colored flame compared to the actual candles, but I don't think that's really noticeable for other players. You know, if you turn into this candle and you stand at the side of any room in any catacombs, no one will know you're there. It is really a perfect disguise. And for some reason, it has a special place in my heart. I don't know why. So, I hope you enjoyed this ridiculous video. Comment down below what your favorite Mimic Veil transformation is, and let me know if I missed any. There's a lot, so I'm sure I missed something somewhere. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.